Hi, everyone. Welcome to Welcome Change. This is the place where we meet social entrepreneurs and learn from them. My name is Maria Clara, and I'm calling today from Bangalore in India. And I'm delighted to be here with Chris Underhill, an Ashoka Fellow who is calling from the UK. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you, Maria Clara.
Same here. So before we jump in, I just want to give a quick reminder of the format. So Chris and I will be here for about 30 minutes. The first half, I'm gonna ask him a few questions, like things that we want to learn from him. And then we're gonna pass through the audience, like if you have if you're curious about something, if you wanna know about something, just use the Q&A button at the bottom to write your questions and we'll come back to them at the end. Okay, so with that, we can start. Chris, we've been planning this for a long time. I have to say that, this, for those who do not know, Chris has been like an incredible mentor, friend, partner for our new longevity work from day one. So it's been really a wonderful journey with him and a good reason to be here together as well. And Chris, one thing that I wanted to start this conversation with something that actually Bill Drayton, the founder of Ashoka, for those who do not know, he always says that, entrepreneurship is a lifelong creative process. Like we've been thinking a lot about that. And, you are a lifelong innovator, mentor, giver, so for the past like over 40 years now. I think when you first started Thrive in the UK, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's 1979, and an organization that is still there.
Yeah.
Pretty much alive and thriving. But then from there, you went to create other global organizations like the Action on Disability and Development, Basic Needs and Cities Rise, where you bring the voices of the work with the communities around the globe. And a few years ago, you joined other two wonderful fellows, Andrea Coleman and Mel Young, to create the Elders Council for Social Entrepreneurs, I'm sorry. And the idea here is to support entrepreneurs, especially those who are in transition, thinking about what is next. So we've been close to you on that journey as well. And I think that besides all of that, you still have a mentoring practice for a couple of years. So it's been clearly a journey of creating, changing, giving back to others. So I want to go back to Bill's remarks. Is entrepreneurship a lifelong creative process?
Well, yes. I mean, I have to agree with him, and certainly in my case, it is the case. As you say, I started my first organization in the late 70s, and it has proved to be that I am what they now call a serial social entrepreneur. In other words, that I've started a number of organizations. But I also wanted to pick up on the word creative, because I do agree with that also, that there's a highly creative aspect to social entrepreneurship, which of course is perhaps at the root of the satisfaction that one might get when being a social entrepreneur. The question also made me think about my parents and the kind of root of creativity, if I can use that phrase. So my mother was an author, a writer. She wrote more than 15 novels, 15 books.
Mm.
And my father and then my stepfather both were artists, and all three came from Australia. So my father, for example, was part of the Australian school in London because they had moved there just after the war when I was born. So that whole sort of question of creativity, I think, is also a very important part and kind of blends with the longevity in a way which I hadn't thought about terribly much until you had asked me the question, and until we sort of began to think about it in our correspondence together.
Mm-hmm. And as you look back, Chris, do you see like some turning points in your life, you know, that are like moments or people who really changed the way that you worked. You know, I was telling you before we started that, you know, I had the chance to read again that article that you wrote for Skoll a few days ago, and it was interesting because I read this during the pandemic in 2020, and what was interesting back then was like I was with that, you know, well-being lens and trying to and pretty much seeing your trajectory from the well-being lens and what actually impacted you and what helped you be who you are. And then as I was rereading the article this time, I was reading with this longevity lens that it was quite different, you know, because I was paying attention to all the people, you know, who supported you on your journey, you know, and how this actually impacting the role that you're playing today. So can you share with us a little bit about this journey and who, you know, who was part of it?
Sure. Very happy to. Very happy to. I think I need to go back quite a long way, if I might, Maria Clara. There was a period when I was very poorly parented. This led to me being at the age of about 9, 10. This led to me being mistreated and actually having to be on the street for a little while, finding food and so on. It was a difficult period, and that led to the events that you are referring to in that Skoll article. And so having what in a childhood kind of way was a mental breakdown at quite an early age is, of course, you know, something that I've reflected on enormously since and discussed with professionals as well as family and so on. And of course, it is really, in a way, it is a key turning point for me. But it is a key turning point, not so much of a sort of intention, but of the body itself taking its own course, its own actions, and wanting in a way to give back in a way which is more to do with the emotion and the spirit than it is to do with a particular decision, you know, for example. So that was certainly a very important period for me. And then the other one, I think, which again was relatively early, that I married in 1969 to Giselle, and we are still happily married today. She and I served in Zambia on voluntary service overseas, a bit like Peace Corps, sort of equivalent. And so she and I were in Zambia, and we went on holiday to Malawi. And at that point, she gave me the news that she might be pregnant, and so we were very pleased about that. So no problem in that department, but we needed to go and have a test. So we went and had a pregnancy test in Lilongwe, the main hospital in Lilongwe, Malawi, and we were incredibly made very welcome. We were made to feel that we were not any bother, which we felt we were, because we were kind of imposing on more serious activities that particular laboratory had to undertake. Anyway, they did the test and it was positive. We were thrilled. And the net result of that is my daughter, who is our eldest child, and she's in her mid-50s. And then we went out of the laboratory area and we got lost in the hospital. It was a big hospital, you know, lots of corridors, and we got lost. And then we came across this cage, a huge cage with big, thick bars. And inside it, eventually I realized, were 5 men with serious mental illness. And there were children who were being allowed to point sticks through the bars to make these people jump. So we went from a kind of really blissful feeling of our own private joy to this other feeling of incredulity at the sight we were seeing, and feeling so sorry for the people involved, and also feeling quite powerless, because at that point I knew very little about mental health and so on. But I made a commitment, which kind of grew in my person over the years, that really something should be done to support people particularly in low-income countries where mental health, at that time especially, was not very well treated. And so that's how it started. I suppose just to say that not all of my influences have been cathartic. I have been influenced by many people, as you rightly allude in the article, for example. And Lord Joel Joffrey would be one such example, a man who originally in his life was the advocate for Nelson Mandela at the Rivonia trials, and then came to the UK and did so much to help a whole group of us, social entrepreneurs and others, get started and so on. And he invested tremendously in most of the organizations that you mentioned. And he also mentored me in a way which was really exemplary. And so it's not all been catharsis and trauma, and sometimes it's been friendship and love.
Yes, yes, always. And you were talking about mental health, Chris, and I mean, this is an area that you've been living personally and also in the work front, right? And as we always like say, it's a very complex issue, mental health, and there's not only one solution, or I think, but I think that in the last few years, what we are seeing, a growth like in awareness, more people talking about it, coming up with new ideas, new solutions for it. So it's it's wonderful to see that as well. But I would love to ask like more from the personal level, if there's any, if you do have any kind of, either one or two things like practices that you nurtured that really helped you throughout your life.
Sure. Well, as you can imagine, having had a difficult start at some stages in my life, in my young life, I place a huge value on family and on the relationship with Giselle and the children that we've been privileged and fortunate to have in our lives, and then of course their children. We have 6 grandchildren, and so without sounding banal, I think one of the important features for me is family and the success of the grandchildren and what they're doing and how they're doing, and then of course the other children that kind of spread out from that and the other family. So we're very lucky in the extended family that we have. I think that's very nourishing from my point of view, and I do find that it sustains me. The other thing is, and this may sound a little bit contradictory, and it may certainly not appeal to those who advocate great calm and meditation, in all times of life. Working in the field of mental health for many years, it has been and still is to a great extent, particularly in low-income countries. It is so under-resourced that you do feel a compulsion to work hard in it if you are involved. And so one of the things that I do find myself being is busy. And of course, that has a special meaning when I'm talking to you, Maria Clara, who is deeply involved in something called New Longevity. And so I say that unapologetically, that I have been really busy at this subject and now know quite a lot about how to deliver programs in that particular area. But it's a kind of way in which the personal and the professional kind of overlap. And I think that's important. But finally, and this may seem like a really contradictory answer to your simple question, finally, I have learned to put matters out of my own mind, which I think is a really important feature of someone who's a mentor, but also someone working in mental health. because, you know, at the end of the day, you come to realize relatively early in this field, and it would be true for all the non-communicables, you begin to realize that you're not, of course, going to be able to, as it were, do everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really personally humble about that. And you have to then do what you can. So the idea is to put things out of your mind when you can't do any more in that particular day or that particular moment, you know, and to understand that you're not going to achieve for everybody, but on the other hand, to work hard at it and to produce, you know, interesting models, ways of working, systems that affect systems change, and so the wheel goes round again.
That's great. And how is the, you know, I was just thinking, like, as you were saying, like the role of joy in all of this. One thing for those who do not know, Chris is a great dancer and singer. Every single event that we were together, he is the first one to dance, and we have videos to prove. But you know, like this aspect of joy, like I think you're very joyful, and you know, and you bring this to the communities you're part of, to the places you are in. So, you know, like, what do you think? Like, why joy is important?
It's a lovely question. By the way, and there are probably many people watching us today who have not seen me dance, and I can assure them that it is a terrifying prospect. I'm a tall person and what they call gangly, you know, all over the place. So,
That's why it's wonderful.
well, maybe. Anyway, there's a nice little video I think you're referring to of me and Anil Patel, and we are dancing together and having a good time. Yeah, well, this comes effectively, you know, out of a kind of sense of curiosity about how other people live, sense of fun, of course, but a sense of curiosity about other people and so on. I remember going to stay with, you know, friends in Rwanda, for example, Charles and Asiata, and they had me to stay with them. And so this is a project partner. The house was a comfortable but quite modest house. And they said to me, "Oh, we'd like to dance for you." And so they put on a particular record, a particular song. And I remember feeling what a treat this was, you know, what a kind of a great sense of gratitude. This couple got up, he had crutches, and then their children peeking out from behind the door. They were supposed to be asleep, you know, and they were all peeking out and looking at this. And then this really graceful dance, beautiful dance occurred. So that, thank God it wasn't me dancing for them, but the important thing, it was that I was, for that moment, I was taken into their lives, into their confidence, into the beauty of the moment. And that seemed to me to be one of the great privileges of working in the way that we do, which is to be able to travel to other people's cultures, other people's countries, and then take part in their joy as much as take part in the work, and so on and so forth.
Yes. And I want to ask like two questions now that are now, let's move to the, you know, the Elders Council for Social Entrepreneurs. So when you, Andre, and Mel decided to create this, can you share with us like what was the intention there in helping, you know, other social entrepreneurs? And also, like a few weeks ago, we talked about this the insight and a few things that you are doing now there. So if you can talk about the Elders Council, share more, and how people could be part of it.
Absolutely. Well, Mel Young and Andrea Coleman and myself, we met sometime ago in London, and we realized that people of our age, approximately, you know, were obviously getting to a point where they needed to make decisions about their lives. You know, sometimes these are decisions. I'm talking about social entrepreneurs here. Sometimes it's decisions about that they wanted to enter a succession plan, actually leave their organizations and go into what sometimes we would call retirement. On other occasions, they wanted to transition to another role. And we also began to become aware as we advanced it further into this discussion and finally into the creation of the organization. We also realized that people quite often at this stage, interestingly, fell out with their boards, or the boards fell out with them. You know, it wasn't always one way. And we now, coming right up to date, we now find ourselves regularly involved in helping one side or the other, or mostly both, try to sort out what the issues are, you know. And it's quite a complicated, very human story. Sometimes we find that the social entrepreneur has not put enough money aside for their comfortable retirement, or to look after themselves when they're perhaps a bit enfeebled as an older or much older person. And so then, you know, there are enormous discussions to be had about who should carry that financial responsibility. Sometimes we find, and by the way, sometimes we find perfect successions. So we also want to celebrate those. As a result of that, we put together this organization, the Elders Council for Social Entrepreneurs, and Mel and Andrea and another colleague of ours, Therese, are now trustees. And then they booted me off the trusteeship and made me become the part-time CEO, which I did with pleasure. But it's an interesting role for us to be able to, and it's deeply privileged for us to be able to meet all of these kind of people in these kind of issues and responsibilities in their lives at that particular moment. So, and of course, it ties into the larger story of new longevity as well. And so that's why it makes so much sense for us to be, you know, talking about this together from time to time. It makes a lot of sense.
Wonderful. And I know that we put the link there for people also like to take a look and join. And one thing that I had a few other questions that I see that one of them overlap with a question that someone here is asking, Marilia Pereira. She's asking, intergenerational collaboration is often described as older people bringing knowledge and experience, while younger people contribute with energy. So in your experience, Chris, working with young entrepreneurs, do you find this to be a fair characterization for both younger and older people?
Well, I'm nearly 77, so almost everybody I work with is going to be a bit younger, if not a lot younger. And incidentally, Maria Clara, in my practice, in my mentoring practice, I find that almost everybody is younger than me, and that's fine. I like the idea that wisdom can guide change, and that change can lead to wisdom. I like that little conceit, which might be interesting for Maria to consider. So I personally find that what is really important for me, particularly when working with young people on a committed, focused project of some kind or another, what's really important for me is to do the listening. I think if you have a kind of inability to change your mind, or an inability to be flexible in your mind when you're an older person, then that can be very intrusive and difficult for younger people to deal with, even if they're being consistently courteous and so on. And so it's really important to be flexible in mind. And that's something I would say that's specifically important for us as older social entrepreneurs. There's no use us trying to say things like, oh, you're just doing something that we did so many years ago and so on. that's deeply boring and often upsetting, in fact. It's not really sensible to take an approach like that with young people who are trying hard to make the world a better place. So what's really important is to tie into that. And that brings me neatly, if I might, to Maria Clara, to the point you were making earlier about insight. Insight is a new website that we've just produced, and I'm sure will be put up on the chat there. And it basically comes out of all the webinars and discussions that we've had with social entrepreneurs over the last few years. And insight is now divided down into leadership, succession, transition, money, and well-being. And it actually is divided up into 3 platforms: webinars, podcasts, and articles. And we very much invite people to have a look at this and to see it. It is, as it were, a wisdom bank coming from social entrepreneurs themselves, many of whom, by the way, were young people and are young people. And some of them, of course, are older. It's a repository, a container of knowledge, which we hope will be of service to social entrepreneurs, both old and young.
And I will ask, Marina Kim is asking, I think connected to a bit to what you're saying, what are the myths, Chris, about mentorship, and what is the most meaningful to you when you're engaging in a mentorship relationship as a mentor now?
Yeah, so this is the question of myth, right? As well as any. So one of the myths is that you know something as a mentor. I mean, go very carefully in that particular pathway, I would say. And I have learned so much from the people I mentor. I mean, really a huge amount. And so one of the myths is that you know everything and the person you're mentoring knows absolutely nothing and you're going to tell them everything. Well, that's a myth. That is absolutely a myth. And my mentoring practice would have run into a brick wall a long time ago if I had taken that approach. So basically, it's a question of listen, probe carefully, ask sensible questions, and keep it simple. Keep it simple. Some president somewhere said, "Kiss," keep it simple, stupid. And I think that's probably absolutely right in this particular context.
One question here from Nikhil Jejurikar, sorry if I didn't pronounce correctly. What is the one skill in your view that the younger generation should try to learn from the wisdom generation as society and cultures evolve at a rapid pace? And there's another one here. What advice would you give to a young social entrepreneur trying to bootstrap a nonprofit initiative with limited resources? This is from Sergio Santamaria.
Wow. Can I go to the last one first, just because it...
yeah.
So I think it's incredibly difficult. I mean, I was talking to someone pretty well known in the social entrepreneurial field, who's right at the head of their organization. And he said to me, it's really difficult running a social enterprise, running a social organization. And I said to him, you're absolutely right, it really is. So the first thing to say is, even if you have the money, it's difficult. If you're also trying to raise the money, the phrase bootstrapping implies that, then of course it's even more difficult. I think what you have to do, if you possibly can, is to be kind to yourself, to give yourself the understanding that this is going to be a difficult journey and quite likely a long journey before you actually get to the stage where you're no longer bootstrapping. The sooner you can get help, the better, usually. but don't go for help which is going to mean that you have to do more work so that the help can be given. In other words, choose carefully who you work with, and once you have chosen well, then commit yourself to that little team and develop further. But it is a difficult one, and I understand the nature of the question very much. I've forgotten the other question.
Yeah, and this question, just so you know, Anil Patil asks a similar question. He also is telling you that he really enjoyed dancing together. Okay, so just so you know. So the other question was about one skill in your view that the younger generation should try to learn from the wisdom generation.
Yeah.
In today's world.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, my generation, I was born in 48. My generation has seen enormous change, very rapid, enormous change. And I think this generation now, from the questioner, for example, I think we're going to see it change, if that's imaginable, even faster, but certainly no slower. And so adapting to change is going to be really important at a kind of a strategic level. That's definitely going to be very important. One thing, it's not a skill actually, but it's a kind of attitude. One thing that I think is really important and is evoked by my wife, Giselle, on a regular basis. She asks me, when I say to her, should I do such and such, or should I become involved in such and such, or should we start this new project or whatever? She says to me, do you think you'll enjoy it? And quite frankly, there have been times when I have said, oh, I'm not sure that I will. And so in which case, probably the best thing is not to do it. And so ask yourself whether you're going to enjoy doing that. And so quite a lot of the skills that I think we can learn from our generation are really soft skills. They're not really to do with, as it were, technology and so on and so forth. That is going to be very much related to the now and as it were, a younger person's skills anyway. But I think we are probably fairly good at having learned some of the softer skills. And will you enjoy it? How will you feel about it? Will other people feel the same way as you? Those are kind of universal skills, but they're worth passing on. That's the reason for them being universal, of course. And so in a way, it's better for me to hand on those kind of skill sets, as well as the skill set of listening, as much as anything else.
So there's one question about mental health here from Pratibhedan from Nepal. He's saying that Nepal, mental health issues still, there's a lot of stigma around mental health issues. So how do we support to break stigma and raise awareness about mental health, knowing that it's a poor country and the issue of elderly people are not emphasized? Any recommendation there?
Yeah. Well, I've had the privilege of working in Nepal, or rather managing a program which then took on a wonderful partner in Nepal, and so I understand the problem that's being referred to. When it comes to stigma, there are several ways I think of working with it, and one of my favorite ways was to help people with a mental illness, with a mental health problem, and their families create the possibility of income generation. Because often, as you may well know, problems are complex, and people not only have this mental health problem, but they also have poverty and considerable poverty. So as soon as the diagnosis and treatment side has begun and is beginning to take effect, to be able to help people into work, even if it's returning to the family farm, or even if it's doing something very simple to begin with, maybe, but not always, but often. It seems to me that is often a way of reducing stigma, because the village, the immediate community around the family who are dealing and struggling with this issue, they will say, well, look, this person is now making a contribution back to the family. And even if it's very modest work or part-time work, that can often be more effective than almost anything I know. And that's at the kind of level of the personal and so on. There have been some great programs at national level which have been related to stigma and anti-stigma. In our own country, Sir Graham Thornycroft led a wonderful program around that, which had a real impact. And so, and now, for example, in the UK, although there's still much stigma, there is quite a lot less than there was. And so it is possible to see this in a national policy kind of way, but it's also important to feed it and to balance it with these kind of more personal community-based activities.
So there are two questions from two very wonderful, beloved fellows, Jimena Bogabir and Howard. So one is about how do you balance personal life and being a serial entrepreneur? And the other one, I know that you probably get this a lot. And the other one from Howard is, would you agree with the statement that the variety of our work, which has a purpose, is the formula to have joy in our lives?
Well, in a sense, he's answered his own question. Howard has. I would agree with that. Yes, I think I think it's a very sensible formula. And you know, social entrepreneurs are funny creatures, you know, and I've been a funny creature for most of my life, in the sense that you know, we are often very independent nature. We have a very independent-minded, and we're not terribly good at being told what to do by other people. On the other hand, we are joyfully constructive and joyfully creative. And I think it's that kind of mix which is, you know, so attractive. I see it, for example, in my two colleagues at the Elders Council for Social Entrepreneurs, Andrea Coleman and Mel Young. You know, I find it very hard to imagine people bossing them around. You know, it just doesn't really even go through my mind, except in relation or in response to the lovely point that Howard's made. But on the other hand, look at the effect that they've had. Look at the achievements they've made, and I think that's the thing that we have to keep in mind, and that's where the joy comes, I think.
Yeah.
The work-life balance thing is I probably have to make a confession to the person who asked. No one else should listen to this except the person.
Jimena, another serial entrepreneur, asking to another one. So I think she wants to compare notes.
Yes. Well, the confession is that I probably don't do it very well. You know, that's the confession. But I do try harder now than I have done in previous incarnations when I've been running particular specific organizations. But I have to say, Jimena, that I like work. And so that ties into, you know, relatively easy way to the point about joy. But I like work, and therefore it works for me. But you know, but I've not always got it right, not by a long way.
Okay, our last question before we wrap up is from Simon, and he's asking regarding mental health. How has the connection to nature shown up in your personal and professional practice? We're going to go back to Thrive now.
Well, so how has nature, did he ask?
Yes, nature, the connection to people's connection to nature shown up in your personal and professional practice.
Yes. Well, that is easy. I did start Thrive, which it used to be called the Society for Horticultural Therapy. So that will give you the clue. It's all about gardening, horticulture, and the therapeutic effect that activity has on your body, on your mind, and on your soul. And it's very much a spiritual matter as much as it is everything else. And so nature has always played an important part in this. I'm blessed by being married to a woman who is a formidable gardener. And so I do get the benefit of being able to sit in her garden. I mean, it's attached to our house, but it is her garden. Let's be clear. and I do get the benefit of being able to sit in her garden. Now that perhaps we can go back to the point about Jimena made, I do get the benefit of sitting there and being able to have a cup of tea or coffee, occasionally a naughty glass of wine, and just being able to enjoy the nature that she has created around us, which I love, of course.
So, Chris, with that, I think we're gonna close. And I want to share one thing that last week I went for my daughter's play in her school, and I thought about you because the play was about this king who came to India searching for wisdom. So it was a beautiful play, kids play. So then the king was meeting people, walking and walking and walking and meeting and talking to everyone. And then at some point, after a long time, at some point, someone asked, so have you found it? So what is wisdom? And then the final line was, wisdom is not a destination. It is the traveler who never stops walking. So I want to end with this because I think it's such a beautiful way of thanking you for being an incredible co-traveler, for traveling very far, and having all of us traveling with you in your journey of wisdom. Thank you so much for the conversation today. Thanks everyone who joined. Soon you're gonna get the email with the link, and so you can share this, or you can reach out also to Chris. But your last words, Chris.
Oh wow, my last words. Well, first of all, it's been a delight talking to you, Maria Clara. Thank you for the invitation. It's been fun, and I'm amazed that the time has gone so fast. So that's good. I think there is a wonderful interplay between us as older people and as older social entrepreneurs and the next 2 or 3 generations coming up. And I really value the fact that I have been able to live long enough to be able to understand that and to appreciate that, and yes, it's possible that we older people might have emotional and interpersonal wisdom, which is useful to people. But we also have to be aware that sometimes we may not have the cognitive agility. So it's always going to be a matter of judgment and of being careful and caring for each other across generations as much as anything else. And with that, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening, morning, night, afternoon, everyone. Bye, Chris. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.